Coming up, some big news from Orbea and some super thin pedals.
And a new 26-inch bike. And we wonder if gearboxes will actually kill the rear mech. It's been 20 years since Honda had their RN01, which is sort of not quite a gearbox bike, but almost a gearbox bike.
Dubious gearbox bike.
Potentially, but it won races and it was wild.
Boy, did it.
And gearboxes are sort of like bubbling back up because they're in the headlines from this year's World Cup.
Yeah.
Because there was a couple of races, Gearbox and Z-Road, I think I'm saying that correctly, had got bikes. And they were pretty successful. But things got heated up last year because Gates, who are a brand of belt drive, which works really well with gearboxes,
Put some money in.
a big chunk of money.
Yeah, $100,000 to the first person to win a World Cup downhill elite race.
Yes, elite.
Yeah, sorry juniors, only for the elite.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's stirred the pot somewhat.
It has. So now, opposed to just having those two teams, well, there's lots and lots more who are kind of either entering the market or teasing that they're going to. I guess most notable is we've got, well, the Athertons teased with an A200G. That was the caption. And they kind of released one little picture. The internet trolls got really excited about it. And then they released another picture in the new year where there was a wild new bike. Lots of components are the same. So they've got Hayes Group brakes, they've got Fox stuff.
Yeah.
But the suspension setup was different and no dangly bit at the back.
It's a gearbox bike. That's what that is. It's very exciting because a very quiet, plush Atherton setup is the dream.
Yeah, it would be.
A high performance, very cool. I've got to say, I really hope the gearbox does take over. Because the lines are just so much cleaner.
They are, yeah.
Derailleurs are ugly.
They're dangly and awkward.
They look like a little knot at the back of the bike. It's like
well,
someone's tied a knot and forgot to finish it.
And it is a bit like a Gordian knot in terms of like all of the things it's got to do. So, but there's more bikes. So not only the Athertons, but also the Flying Scotsman, Reece Wilson.
Yeah.
Hi, Reece. He's sort of, it wasn't that secret, but it was sort of a secret. He's launched his own team on a new bike. Details have not come out yet, but the bike he's on seems to have a belt drive, looks like it's got a gearbox, looks a lot like the Gearbox Sago, which...
It is.
It is. Boom, he's saying it, right,
yeah.
okay. So pinion gearbox and belt drive. So could that win this £100,000?
Well, there's a few people now in the running for that.
Well,
I mean,
there
that
are,
would make a big difference to your year, wouldn't it? And Reece is someone who could do that.
He could, easily, yeah. He got
yeah.
really close last year and the year before, so... Yeah, go Reece.
And it's a great looking bike. I love that bike. It looks cool.
It is. It's really clean and interesting. So the other team that sort of have had a dabble with gearboxes in the past is Intense. So they did a Proto one, which I think we talked to John Hall, who was one of the mechanics on the team at the time and is now working for Intense, all about that bike. And it's interesting, we're talking about downhill a lot, but these are often 12-speed systems. So I guess it all started in 2023 when Pinion developed their smart shift. So they'd had a gearbox before, but it had a bit of a clunky, grip shifty style thing, and it had cables. And now they've got the smart shift system.
Yeah, much cleaner.
Yeah, much cleaner, and it sort of starts to really compete with a derailleur and big cassette one-by setup. So we've got 600% gear range, so that's very competitive. And then there's lots of other good things about a gearbox.
Yeah. I mean, as well, in the e-bike world, of course, where Pinion brought out the MGU, which is where gearboxes are going to have probably a lot more potential to really infiltrate the whole
take over
standard because it really makes an awful lot of sense because the weight isn't such an issue on an e-bike, and it just all starts to fit much better with that. Obviously, they've already got basically the problem of fitting something at the bottom of the seat tube and the down tube, which a derailleur bike hasn't got, which means you've got more options in terms of linkage suspension.
Agreed. So like Santa Cruz sort of famously have got their VPP suspension setup, and they redesigned, okay, it's an e-bike, but it's a good sort of practice of seeing how stuff, I think they say packaging, that's how they're kind of putting all the parts together. They had to redesign, they've stuck with VPP for, well, they were one of the original partners with Intense. From Outland, we should say. So keyboard warriors, don't worry. Outland did it first. Intense and Santa Cruz co-bought the brand. But they redesigned their bike to be a more traditional 4-bar linkage so that it would fit with an e-bike. So you can think that, okay, some brands are redesigning it differently. On downhill bikes, moving that weight around, as you said, they are heavier. They're about a kilo heavier than the traditional sort of derailleur setup. But on a downhill bike, that's a good thing. It's all about sprung mass and unsprung mass and all this fun stuff. And on a downhill bike, you want the kind of sprung mass to be the heavier number. Yeah. And by moving all the gearboxy bit in there, but I think
lower centre of gravity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can shift because it's it's interesting in terms of how it works. Effectively, the clutch, if you think of it like a car one, it's your freewheel. So it means you can shift at any point because the gears are always sort of whirling and you can just shift them. So it's really good to shift on the fly. And actually, Jonesy's done a good video where he shifts instantly while he's under power on an e-bike, but it shows how resistant they are. Yeah. Also, having the rear mech in a gearbox means that it's like in oil. It's in like a bath of oil all the time. It's not getting mud and grit all over it.
I mean, well, the whole maintenance side of things is it's so minimal, dude. It's just like you just jet wash it off and it's ready to go.
Yeah, and you can happily jet wash it because you're not spraying like bits of crud onto the chain because it's a belt, and then the gearbox is literally in oil and weather sealed, and it's like 10,000 miles before you change that oil. Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting.
I feel like it's really only the weight issue that is in the way of it taking over. It's the only thing that could possibly, because the weight's in the right place.
Yes.
And you could argue that it's been proven that weight in that place on the bike, that low centre of gravity, central, actually helps with grip and being planted in the corners. Lots of people on e-bikes say, I feel so much more planted on this bike. Downhill testing, they're always adding weight to the bike now.
Yeah.
So I really feel like if they can just get the weight down, that derailleur's gone, man. I won't miss it.
So we're sort of convinced on the success of gearboxes. I think they're going to win a downhill race this year. But are they going to win, hearts and minds? And are they going to win you over? Are you tempted to get an e-bike with a gearbox? Are you tempted to get a normal mountain bike with a gearbox? Let us know. Join the debate in the comments below.
Okay, next up, super thin pedals.
Yeah, one up the Pacific Northwest ultra innovators. They've developed lots of cool things, including sort of like stashable tools and pumps, and really good dropper posts that are known for being really adjustable and also reliable and having lots of spares available. Well, they've developed an all-new pedal.
Okay, so we've got a low-profile, broad platform, just 26.8 millimeters, and they are the thinnest clip pedals in the world. 14.4 millimeter body. This big platform size is 80 by 90 mil, and the large platform's designed to support your shoe while riding for more confidence and control.
And the clip system is a classic, tried and true SPD compatible interface. It's got custom stainless steel binding, which eliminates all the front to back and up and down movement for a really tight cleat fit that doesn't sacrifice float. And whilst they look big and burly, they're actually light enough for trail and even XC use. And for those that like to match things, they're available in 8 different colours. I think what I find interesting is that it's somebody sort of used the platform. So we say SPD, that's Shimano Pedaling Dynamics for the nerds out there. And they've reworked it to kind of work better. So it's got a 12-degree release angle, which is quite a lot more than Shimano. And with that cleat setup, they've also, in the box, you've got spacers, so you can make sure that the cleat is in exactly the right spot, which I think is a really nice detail. Q factor is quite a wide, or pedal stance as One-Up call it, which is 57.5. So it's a pretty wide stance, but that works well with modern mountain bike shoes that are a bit chunkier. And as with lots of the One-Up components, they've got lots and lots of spares, and they even include a little bearing tool in the box, which is really good. Really good support for that. Pricing starting in the US from $159.99, same price in euros, so $159.99, and here in the UK we get it for $142.99. Good stuff.
Next up, YT's ISO Core range.
Yes!
Yeah, the ISO being their first foray into the shorter travel.
Yeah, I mean, we could almost say down country for them.
Dare we say it?
Yeah, I mean, they've done dirt jump, they've done downhill stuff before, but this was their first sort of short travel one. So 130 mil on the back, proper 4-bar suspension, matched to 140 forks. And yeah, this is kind of a newer well, it's not really a new bike. They've still got the carbon front end of lots of them. Some of these models have got aluminium back end. One of them's got a carbon back end. But I think what's interesting is they've done some clever stuff with the spec on all these different bikes. So the core one is your sort of, well, what YT are calling base, I'd say entry level, but you get a lot for your money. You get Mazzocchi suspension, so Bomber Z2 fork, you get Dior drivetrain, you get Sun Ringley wheel set in a blue colourway.
Azuri blue.
Oh,
nice.
Always getting the good attention to detail. 2499 in all the monies, which is quite unusual, but yeah.
Yeah, great deal in pounds if that's the case. The Core 2 has got the RockShox Pike Select Plus Charger damper. It's got the Deluxe Select Plus shock, mixed SLX and XT drivetrain, and the Crank Brothers Synthesis XET wheel set, and that is in Rakan Red.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
All for just 3299.
In all the monies.
Yeah, again, I like all the monies. Core 3, so this is a bit more blingy. It's a bit more money, so we'll go money first. It is 4499 in all the monies, which is getting spendy.
Yeah.
However, it's quite a sharp spec. And interestingly, it's got an Öhlins RXF. I have to say that the right way around because it's really easy to get confused, but the RXF 36 M3, more on that a bit later, matching Öhlins TTX1 rear shock. It's got the carbon back end, it's got DT Swiss wheels, and it also gets the exclusive to YT all blacked out Renthal fat bar and stem combo in a nice silver.
Mizu silver.
Oh, Mizu. Not just
silver.
Nice, Mizu.
And talking about Öhlins, tell me about that Öhlins shock.
I know, because it's all new.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Secretly sort of like released, but this is the new RXF 36 M3.
Yeah.
M.3, not to be confused with M3. I always think of Beamers with M3s, but maybe that's just
Try
me.
not to. Just try not to.
Okay, right. Swedish Suspension Maestros have reworked their trail fork, which is the 36. So that's the diameter of the stanchions, and it's got, well, the same as 36 as it had before, but it's got, well, new lowers and a new chassis. So it's, lots of new all over and lots of clever suspension tech too. So Öhlins do things differently compared to a lot of brands, and sometimes it can take a little bit longer to set up, but Bruni has sort of proved that, well, it works really well. And I'm mentioning Bruni because whilst this is a trail fork, it's got the same, I've got to read, hang on, TTX 18 damping platform. So that's exactly the same system that they put in the 38, which is what Bruni is racing on. So it will really work. What's also interesting, and can be a little bit time consuming, is it uses a triple air setup. So you've got 3 air chambers to play with.
Scared.
It can be overwhelming, but it can mean that you can get really optimum performance just for you. I mean, they have lots of AAA stuff in motocross, and Öhlins are in motocross. So it is meant to be a very good platform. Gets a bit more confusing in terms of like these forks, because we've got 3 different offsets, but across a couple of different forks. So there's just one 275, which is 170mm. Then we've got lots of options with a 44mm offset, all 29, and then the longest travel 29er has a 51mm offset. I know, lots of confusion. Lots of fork travel as well. So we've got 150, 140, 160 in 29er, and then there's that outlier 170 in the 275. And finally, I touched on the air spring, and I quite like this. The air spring is actually a cartridge. Normally cartridges are reserved for the damping side, but they put the air spring in a cartridge too, so that if you have to take it out to maybe switch to a coil in the future, there's less to take out. All yours for €1,500.
Yeah, it feels like a fork that you really need to know what you're buying when you spend your €1,500. Yeah,
I think
it really
that's
does.
fair. Yeah.
But guaranteed it's going to look sick.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah, that's the important bit.
You feeling peckish? I'm getting a bit peckish now. Midway
Yeah,
through.
I'm peckish. I'm peckish.
Fancy a sandwich?
Yeah, I guess.
Right, yeah, okay, cool. What would be your favourite topping on a sandwich?
Bacon, lettuce and tomato.
Oh, okay.
Why?
It's not very helpful
You
for
look
the
good.
segue. Yeah, I thought you were going to say peanut butter and jam, because that's what this new bike from Sklar Bikes is named after.
Well done, Owen.
Yeah,
well
thanks.
Done,
I know
well
I laboured it, but yeah, genuinely, we almost missed out on Sklar's Tall Tail 29er, which actually got lots of comments. Lots of people liked it.
I love this bike. It looks
we're
cool.
not missing out. We're getting in early, so early that, well, it's available for pre-order, this bike. But this isn't a peanut butter and jam. This is the Performance Basket Jammer, which sounds great.
Yeah.
Effectively, you can run it geared, you can run it single speed, you can run it with a short travel fork, so about
All rigid.
110, all rigid, because it comes with a rigid fork, Really nice looking rigid fork.
Yeah, double-butted, heat-treated chromoly steel, cargo cage mounts on either side, as well as M5 bosses mid-blade at the dropout and hole at the crown for a rack or fender.
I know, you're getting excited, aren't you?
There's a lot on there I wouldn't have looked for, but I get where you're going with it.
So designed around a 29 by 2.6 tyre, so it's big, chunky, full external cable routing, and 5 sizes, which for a small builder I think is really impressive, and 2 colours. Moss green, which I had to double check that because to me that looks grey.
Yeah, it looks
Maybe
great.
my eyes have gone funny.
The one I like though is salmon.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah,
back to
that's nice,
food
guys.
again.
Yeah,
all yours available on pre-order for £1,171.
Handsome bike, that.
Very
handsome.
Okay, we often get comments, especially after we show cool 29ers or 650B bikes. Where are the 26-inch bikes? Ah! Well, here's one now.
Look at that.
Squid
Perfect.
Bikes,
Yeah.
hyper cool brand from the US, have got a really cool bike called Maybe Dead ATB, and it's a 26-inch sort of bolt-through bike that you can build in lots of different ways. It's made in the US, 12 by sort of 142 back end, normal 12 by 100 front. It's got a UDH, so you can run T-type, but it's got a press fit bottom bracket which works with their own eccentric cup, so you could run it as a single speed. Might be able to run it fixed as well. But it is 26 by 2.4, compatible at yours for £1,792. See, 26-inch still exists.
Proper old school. And finally, FMD and Orbea, big mates.
Yes.
Set up a new team.
Yeah.
Love it. It is the Orbea FMD racing team. Love it. And what's the catchy little tag?
The Gravity Cooperative.
The Gravity Cooperative, yeah. It's a very exciting team, but we don't actually know too much about it, other than it's going to have like the FMD structure to it. So
and they'll all be on Orbea bikes.
They will be on Orbea bikes, but the platform of what that bike is, we don't know yet. We don't know the roster yet of who the riders are. We're presuming Tani Seagrave is in there.
I mean, she's a World Cup winner.
And her dad is the manager of the team.
I think the World Cup winner bit is the most important, but
yeah.
I mean, last year, just as a kind of brief fact check for people, last year we saw Martyn Mays, Enduro racer for Orbea, do some testing on, initially in the pits, everyone was like, why is he on an e-bike? Because it looked like he was on Orbea's Wild e-bike.
Yeah.
That Wild is a name, it's not just a Wild e-bike. But it was a sort of prototyping session from their Orbea's OLab, which is a bit like their Skunk Works, where they're testing things out. And lots of sort of rumour and sort of chat was, it's a new downhill platform. But it turns out actually Orbea were testing their Wild e-bike to the fullest. So it's designed as an enduro bike to take on the toughest tracks. And they're like, why don't we throw it down a downhill track and see?
And they were obviously dipping their toe into the downhill world as well to see if they really do love it, and they obviously did.
Yeah, which is super exciting. So yeah, go on Tane. Can't wait for her to keep on her winning ways. Well, and also see what bike they're on.
Yeah. Okay, time for last week's quiz results.
Oh, yep.
The big question last week, what country was Commensal founded in?
Andorra.
Yes, well done. Absolutely, tons of winners. 23 winners.
Yeah, that's loads.
Well done, you
all
lot.
of you on screen now. Well done. Special shout out to Tim and Sepster58. So yeah, thanks for that.
Favouritism.
Love it. Yeah, it is.
What about this week's quiz, Owen?
We have got, where are one-up components based? I know, it's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get in the comments down below. Put in your suggestion, your quiz answer. Ask GMBN Tech, the bit where you get to ask us tech questions. Just use the hashtag AskGMBNTech in the comments below and we'll be able to answer them.
Yeah, just like Sean in the Canyon did, like that name.
Yeah,
he says, hashtag AskGMBNTech. Is rear suspension sag frame specific or shock specific? For example, if I long stroke my Trek EXE from 60mm to 65mm of shaft travel, should I set sag for 60mm shock or 65mm shock?
Great question first. Love a question like this. We're talking about rear suspension and we're talking about shock stroke. So that's however long the suspension shock absorber is on the back. The bit it moves is the stroke. So you can have a really long shock, but the stroke number is the one that we matter about because that's how much it can absorb. And the ratio between the shock and the rear axle path will make a really big difference to how the suspension system works and how that ratio, which is changed by the linkage and all the wonderful term kinematics, is going to change how much difference it makes at the back end to how much it changes. I know that sounds really sort of confusing. What I mean is, if you went up to a longer stroke shock, well, it's going to change lots of things. It's going to make the seat angle steeper. It's going to make the head angle steeper. It's probably going to raise the BB as well. Just in geometry changes. How it affects how the suspension works, without looking at the sort of geometry chart, I can't tell you all the kinematic
Possibly
chart.
You could get things hitting things that shouldn't.
Exactly. This is where we crash into. We can worry about stuff, but actually you probably will void your warranty very quickly.
Right.
Because on some bikes, they do allow you to fit different shock lengths and different stroke lengths to play with the suspension. On the Trek Fuel EXE, I'm very confident it's just designed around that 60mm stroke. So if you put a longer stroke in, it's going to mess a lot of things up. All of which you could work around, because it's got a little flip chip and you can change the geometry, but I don't think the warranty team are going to be that impressed. So, I would say probably don't do it. Back to setting sag, it is to do with how the bike works, and as designed, they've designed it around to have 30% sag, so that's what you'd need. Sorry that doesn't help you per se, but check with your brand to check what shock you need.
Yeah, good question though, like it. Okay, time for some comments from last week's show. Was MTB better 10 years ago? That's a good question.
No.
Brooke Spirit starts with, like most hobbies, people get obsessed with the latest gear instead of just enjoying the hobby with perfectly good equipment, no matter its age or technology.
Well, I mean, disagree with you there, but that's fine. We've got Ubraz Sniper. I'm not sure how you say that name, but
Sounds like an accusation.
It does actually, yeah.
Ubraz Sniper.
He says, still rocking 26-inch hardtail with bolt-on axles. Maybe he'd got that squid bike.
Yes.
Maybe he's got new school.
Yeah.
E-Monty 62 a decade ago was better.
That's just final. Timbery 4250, he says modern bikes are fantastic, but I'm sick of drab colours. Let's have some bright yellow rock shocks again and a bit more colours on the frames. Yeah, back in 10 years ago there was more colour.
There was. I mean, I think the other thing is people are forgetting that bikes 10 years ago, I'm not saying they were crap, but you had to spend a lot of money to get a good one, and now you don't have to spend loads of money to get a good one. But anyway, Tim Sadler, hi Tim, only thing he misses about 2015 is print media. Media. So is that where they chopped down trees, mashed it up in stuff, and then put like inky type stuff in it and sold it in shops?
Yeah, Eco Warrior, that is what we used to do, and we loved it.
Yeah, well, so does Tim, and he really misses it. He's not saying he doesn't love the channel, obviously, and the speed of the bikes today, and the speed of bike news today, it's basically instant. But he really liked magazines back in the day, especially Dirt.
I do miss like looking through a mag and seeing all of the new bikes and reading about the heroes. Yeah, but it's not the main, it's not where everything was pointing at that back in those days.
True.
Even longer than 10 years ago. Everything was pointing at that. Things were trying to get in that. Yeah. And now everything's just trying to get everywhere. So it's a bit more scattergun.
Well, I loved all those comments. It's great. Yeah. We are in the comments a lot. So, we'll be there too. What's coming up this week?
We've got some great stuff. Saturday, the craziest bike tools you've never heard of with Calvin and Truman.
Nice.
Love it.
Legends from Part Tool. And on Sunday, we build a bike solely from AliExpress bits.
Cheap and nasty.
Well, it was an interesting process. So get involved in the conversation. Join us in the comments below. And let us know. Do you think Derailleur's life expectancy, do you think it's going to go?
It's time for the Gearbox.
Gearbox is coming?
Let's do it.
Let us know in the comments below.